coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast. I'm Laura.
And I'm Kate. And this week, coffee isn't enough because back to school calls for all-nighters, which calls for Monster. Tastes like undergraduate studies. This week, we're headed back to Yale to have a discussion about some of the social aspects of Yale, particularly Rory's roommates in her Durfee suite and her living situations with Paris.
But before we dive in, this is your friendly reminder that this is a spoilers all podcast. We will be talking about anything and everything from the show. So if you haven't seen it, it's 2024. We still don't know what you're doing with your life. Go flip it on and then come back and join us. And if you could remember to do all of those YouTube things for us, please like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's one click below. It really helps us out. Share it with all your GG friends. We're always grateful for the support.
Indeed. Yeah. So we're going back to school again. Last year around this time, we covered the more academic side of university experiences. And this time we're talking more about how to survive socially and Rory's experiences with the people that she lived with in season 4 and after. We touched on a couple social things last year, like spring break and the first party in The Hobbit, the Sofa and Digger styles. We talked a little bit about Anna visiting Rory from Chilton. And we talked about Paris's impact on Rory academically. But now we're going to be talking about like dorm life. So you lived in a dorm, right? Tell me about that.
I did for literally only one semester, and it was a horrible experience, which is probably why it only ever lasted a semester. But I was an 18-year-old freshman entering college. And my roomie in my dorm experience right off the bat was horrible. I was supposed to be with 2 other girls, both of whom backed out before day 1. So I had to go into my first night at college in a room by myself. And I think it really was just not a good experience. You want that socialization night 1. You want to start meeting the girls that you're going to be rooming with, the girls on your floor. And I just didn't have the opportunity to do that. So it was very almost kind of like a lonely first night. When it should have just been a little bit more fun and probably more in line with what we see in, season 4, episode 2. I wish I had an experience like that. But instead, I think I was just ending up like watching movies and reading and just, getting my room prepared. And there was just nobody to talk to. When I eventually did end up getting a roommate assigned a couple weeks later who moved in with me, she was a nightmare on Christmas. We did not get along. We butted heads all of the time. And had I even stayed at that university, I eventually moved on to another one. I would have put in a request to have a different roommate because she was just horrible. And I think it's when I eventually changed schools, one of the reasons why I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. If I can commute, I'm probably going to, because it was just such a bad experience that it stayed with me. And I just wish I had had a different one.
That's fair. I seem to have a better experience than you did. I moved all the way across the country for school, so living in a dorm was sort of preordained. UBC is also sort of like, it's not an island literally, but it's kind of an island unto itself. It's this sort of like peninsula, like the very tip of a peninsula off the western edge of Vancouver, and like it takes several minutes in a car or on a bus just to like get off of campus. And then there's this whole big forest between it and any part of the city. So it's very much kind of like off on its own. And commuting isn't impossible, but I did that in my last year. And it was a little tougher because the buses were just jam-packed getting into the campus. But backtracking a little bit, to my first house, my first experience, I lived in a residence called Totem Park. If there are any UBC alums here, you'll know what I'm talking about. I lived in Haida House, and like I had a shared room. I lived in a double. Pro tip, if at all possible, do not live in a double. I know you were sort of sad that your experience didn't work out with your roommates, but like my roommate was a perfectly nice girl, but sharing a single like 8x10 room with another human being that you have just met, I feel like is a really bad idea for just about anyone. I think it's sort of like a weird myth that we have that this is somehow good for our socialization. I think that it's much better if you can at all possible, like if at all possible, get a single on a floor with people, because sharing a physical space with someone who you don't know is going to align with your lifestyle is not going to be easy, especially if college or university is already a big transition for you. Like, for example, I'm the kind of person who snoozes her alarm a lot, and my roommate was more of a morning person and was up. And so I was sleeping in, snoozing my alarm 10 times. She wasn't too thrilled with that. And then I was up late trying to study and work on stuff while she was sleeping. And so it's like, you have to have headphones and keep your lights down. And it's not very conducive to focus and studying and just being at peace in your own space, to have someone literally 5 feet away whose schedule is completely opposite of yours. And so I didn't love that. It was one of those things that I was looking forward to. I was like, this is so cool. Everybody does this. Like, that's the thing, you know, they say that it's good. You make friends that way, but it really didn't turn out that way for me. I know some people love it and end up being lifelong friends with their roomies, and other people are just like, no. I think maybe if you're an extrovert and you're just so go with the flow, maybe you can make it work. But I think it's better for people to have their own space so that they can focus on their studies and not like worry about drama with roommates or trying to tiptoe around other people's schedules. So there's all of that. I lived in residence again my second year. This time I had a single on a floor in a different house within the same residence. That was fun. Between those 2 years, I lived in a suite style residence. And then in my third year, I also lived in a suite style residence. And so like I've had a little mixture of everything. And living in a suite with people was a lot better, I would say, than the double room, because at least you have your own private space and then a couple shared spaces. So you can still have that social aspect without like literally being on top of someone else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and even speaking as a resident extrovert, I could not make it work. And I will not like chalk myself up to being blameless, but it was just because my roommate was just doing some really questionable things that could have gotten like myself into trouble as well. You know, I don't want to tangentialize too much. Like she was bringing men back into the room constantly. And it's like, this is not a suite. I'm 5 feet away from you. Like, no dice, you know, and there was just a lot that was wrong there. And so I think you need to be with somebody, if you're going to be that in that close proximity, who's going to be harmonious with you, who you can get along with. I almost wished there was like, in the same way that Rory had like a shopping week for classes, that you could have like a shopping week to meet the girls that are entering into the same dorm as you are, and maybe figure out like, we don't have to room together immediately. Everyone gets a single to start, but eventually you're going to have to pick somebody and just have some time to do that. There are other options as opposed to just getting thrown in with somebody when you don't know what's going to work. And I'm glad for all the times it does, but a lot of the times it doesn't.
Yeah, I feel like the rooming people, the people who are making decisions about who lives together, are not asking enough questions. Let's put it that way. It's sort of like you fill out a very basic survey about, you know, your proclivities and what you think you want, but it's not enough. I think there needs to be a little more like, maybe it's just my school. Maybe other schools do this fine. And like they have a whole 100-point checklist where it's just like, when do you wake up in the morning? When do you go to bed? How do you like to exist in your space? Are you clean? Are you not clean? Like, you know, all these things that might, like almost more like Match.com, but for roomies. Just a little more thorough, shall we say, in their setup of that. But yeah, I think when you also have a good school with a really robust residence system, it's good that, you know, your RAs or RCs or whatever you call them, Dons. That's the thing that we call them in Ontario. And I'm like, where does the word Don come from? Like, was somebody just watching The Godfather and thinking, that's a cool word for our residence counselors? So we called them RAs in my res. And, you know, they would set up mixers so that everybody could meet, and there would be events and stuff we could go to. And then there was residence councils as well. So it was people who were elected to maintain the social life of the residents. And I did that for 2 years. I did it once, like my second year when I was still living in Totem Park. And then I also did it when I lived in Marine Drive. So, you know, there are a lot of other ways that you can meet the people in your residence, and then you can contribute to the social life of the residents without having to share a room and like maybe have a year where you can't have a boyfriend because you can't even bring them home. So there's that. But all of this actually kind of reminds me of the conversation that Rory and Lorelai had when they went to Harvard. Remember when they like busted into someone's dorm room?
Yeah, which was first off wild that the door was just open, but that also doesn't give you the right to walk in. That was weird. But go on.
Susie. Yeah. And Lorelai's commenting on how there's 2 beds, so somewhere for her to sleep. And Rory's like, that would be my roommate's bed. Oh, you don't want a roommate. I don't think I have a choice. They just force someone on you? It's all part of the socializing experience. What if it's a lemon? Then I'm stuck with a lemon. Hare Krishna banging a tambourine all night? Then I have to get earplugs. Serial murderer? Then I sleep with a gat strapped to my ankle. Someone who likes Linkin Park? Then I have to drop out.
Not wrong about the Linkin Park. But yeah,
I like Linkin Park.
Okay, well, you do you. Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. You're not going to ever have any privacy. You know, the boyfriend is a great example as well, but sleeping schedules, maybe even just, you know, getting dressed, getting ready for the day, personal grooming, like XYZ, whatever you want to chalk it up to. If you're not in a suite setting like Rory was, and I mean, granted, she was even, you know, sharing a room with Paris, but that's, to me, I think, an ideal setup for anyone starting out, where you can at least have your own room and then a shared living room area. So there's still socialization, but privacy. And I feel like I'm sure there are a lot of schools that offer that to their students, but more often than not, there's just not enough housing or space for that. So you're just shoving people together. I'm just actually kind of shocked that there aren't more disaster stories out there.
There probably are. We just haven't watched enough YouTube story times to catch them all. But yeah, I agree. Privacy is the key word there. And especially when, like I said, you're there to study, you're there to learn. Not having a space that's conducive to that because, you know, your roommate likes to listen to their music too loud, or they're doing crafts and the smell of the glue is making you nauseous. I don't know. They're jumping on a trampoline so you can't focus.
Doing crunches at 5 a.m.
Yeah, turning off your alarm because they were up all night working on a lab and someone woke them up at 5:30 and they got no sleep. So you missed breakfast on waffle day. Yeah. If I could go back and do it over again, I would have tried to request a single, and not fallen prey to the myth that it's a good idea to live in the same room with another person. Like, I'm about to get married and I'm going to have to, you know, like share a space with someone. And so it's one of those things that we're going to have to do eventually, but like you can build roommate skills and figure out how to live with someone else copacetically without throwing yourself to the wolves in your first year of university when, you know, you're away from home for the first time. You're already maybe homesick. You're trying to learn a completely new way of learning and working and studying. And on top of that, now you have this other layer of modulation that you have to figure out in terms of how to communicate effectively with someone who is 5 feet away from you at all times, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I agree. And we can talk about it more as we get into this episode and, you know, how I think you can be a good roommate. I think communication and dialogue is one of them. But should we move on into Rory moving into Yale and her first night and what meeting her roomies was like?
Yeah, let's do it. That's one of my favorite episodes. I've probably said this before, but I just adore that. Another thing I did because I loved my time in residence so much was volunteering for move-in day. So that's a great memory that I have from my own time. And so I love watching that episode and just being taken back to, you know, those first days of independence on my own. Obviously, I had a very different experience than Rory, where, you know, my grandparents dropped me off and then were gone again. And I just sort of was like, woo, freedom. Whereas Rory's like, I miss my mommy. I shouldn't miss my mommy. I can vote and sign contracts. Like, I'm a grown up. I should not miss my mommy. And she's right. She was a little too much of a mama's girl. She said it herself.
Yeah. The codependency did not do any favors for Rory that first night in terms of the constant comeback texts. But what do you make of Lorelai spending the night there for her first night, and what she did for the other girls on the floor and getting all of the food and trying to make it more communal? Do you think that was a good move, a bad move? Why or why not?
I think overall it was a good move. A little unorthodox, perhaps, to have your mom or like if you're one of the roommates, having one of your roommates' moms stay the night on the first night is probably not something you had on your Yale bingo card. But at the end of the day, Lorelai is fun and young at heart, and she's very charismatic. She does have a way of making things easy and fun. We see this time after time after time, with the kid's birthday party that they throw in the next episode, and April's birthday later on in season 6. She just has a way about her of bringing people together. And so I think it was also very generous of her to do that for them, to treat them to all that food and to break the ice for them, because, obviously Rory is not the most extroverted person. Paris is having troubles of her own adjusting. Tana is Tana. And Janet's not even there yet. And so she saw that maybe these girls might have a hard time on their own opening themselves up to bringing people in and to making friends. And so she tried to bridge that gap and be like, hey, first floor Durfee, there's tons of food. Come join us. Let's have a party. There was music. There was fun. There was free food. Like, what more could you ask for on your first night at college? Sure, it's a little weird, but Lorelai's not really your typical mom. And so I don't know how everybody else reacted to it, but they're like, you know what? This is pretty cool. Who did all this? The woman with the hairbrush.
Yeah, no, again, I would have loved to have had an experience like that my first night. It's not always easy to go up to people that you don't know and even just say hi, or how are you, or what's your name, or what are you thinking you want your major to be here while you're at Yale. Like, even just your routine icebreakers can be really hard to do. So I think that's why RAs and, whatever you want to call them exist as well, because one of their jobs is to have everybody be cohesive and to start bridging those gaps and just forming those friendships and those relationships so that you don't feel so isolated right off the bat. So I think it was a wonderful thing that Lorelai did that first night. I think it made it so much easier, not only for Rory, not even only for Tana and Paris, but I'm sure a lot of other girls on the floor also really appreciated it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I wonder how much she spent on takeout that night.
Like, they had hundreds of dollars.
They had like 8 pizzas. Seriously. Although I didn't love the whole, like, we're judging these restaurants by, not only how good the food is, but how cute the delivery guys are. Come on.
Yeah, it's a little bit objectifying.
A little bit. But I love how they turned it into a verb, too. We're going to Lorelai some places later. That was cute. Yeah, I love that episode. And it's funny to watch Rory go from, freaking out over the idea of having to share a bathroom with people and it being so weird and so foreign, to being okay with it the next day. Lorelai eventually leaves and she's like, I'm fine now. I'm fine. It's a pretty quick turnaround, but I don't know. It looked like fun. I wouldn't have minded it for my own first night. Although I've told the story before, but my first night at university was mostly pretty fun too. Maybe a little too fun.
We're cupcakes for a reason.
Indeed.
We're just going to leave it at that. We do enjoy partaking from time to time, and that's all we're going to say.
From time to time. Yeah. Would you want to be...
Oh, no, I think we're about to ask each other the same question. So go ahead.
I was going to ask, would you want to be roommates with Rory?
I would not. Rory, again, I'm a nice person. I just feel like she was very much, I'll just come out and say it. I think very selfish as a roommate in terms of it's my way or the highway. You know, this rooming situation and this lifestyle needs to be cohesive to me and what I want. I think to like even just Paris broaching the idea of like, can we have our door open for like a party so that people can come in? And she just instantly shoots it down without even talking with like Tana or Janet. Like there's a democracy that needs to be happening here. But she's so right off the cuff, unwilling to compromise or have dialogue or a conversation about that. I feel like if I was rooming with Rory, I would be open to having like, those chats about like, what can we do to make this good for the both of us? But I feel like Rory was just so, again, that's the best way I can put it, just unwilling to compromise. It's my way or the highway. Things are going to be how I want. And I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of even just getting like, not that she would, I guess, be like mean or about it, but just passive aggressive about my roommate's schedule bothers me, me, which we've talked about, like that's Rory to a T. Just all in all, no. Just with what we know of her personality and how she is and how honestly self-centered she can be. I don't think I would enjoy having her as a roommate.
I'm a little more equivocal than you on this one. I don't think I would mind her as a roommate because she would probably be a good influence on me in terms of encouraging me to stay focused and driven and actually focusing on studying instead of just all of the socializing all of the time. And she would have a great book collection to borrow from. she generally seems like she seems like she's got a good routine and rhythm down at school. She's very focused on academics. She's not going to be super loud or having parties all night every night. And she makes a good point to Paris when she says, we can just go to other people's rooms for this party. We don't have to partake ourselves, and then we can come home whenever we want and it can stay quiet. And I kind of concur with that. Especially, maybe it's just my experience, but the RAs in my dorm were pretty strict about parties. You couldn't have more than a couple people in your room at any given time. And if you had a bunch of alcohol, that was a big red flag and you could get written up, you could get in trouble. I love how we, like, after episode 2 of season 4, we never see an RA ever again. Those characters who helped them get settled in that episode just poof. So there's never any oversight or any idea that these large gatherings of people in dorm rooms is troubling. So I personally would be like, I don't want to draw attention to myself and potentially get in trouble for, someone getting too drunk and puking on my floor or being too loud and attracting attention, getting us in trouble. So I'd probably be a little more like, yeah, we'll just go to the party instead of hosting the party. So there's that. I mean, there are a few other sort of red flags from Rory as a roommate. Obviously, we have Emily breaking in and refurnishing her entire dorm with $25,000 worth of furniture and stereo equipment. Rory makes a great point. Grandma, some of that might have been my roommates, and then you just took it. You probably shouldn't have done that. And Emily's like, you have to live like a Yaley now. You need to realize that status matters, and now you have the upper hand because you have provided all of these nice things to your roommates. And the power imbalance that could create might not be the most comfortable thing, but I wouldn't necessarily hate benefiting from the nice sofa and the nice TV and the nice stereo system. So I'd be like, yeah, okay, I can live with this.
Yeah, I was rewatching that episode just as preparation for this, and I will say it just made me chuckle when she's like, it's a plasma TV with a DVD and VHS, and I'm like, oh, goodness gracious, in 2024. But What also really gets me about that, and I love Olivia's performance as Tana in this regard. That girl is just so head in the clouds with what's going on. I love how she's just like, Rory just asks her, like, where did this come from? When she's like, I don't know, it's just here. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Just no questions, head empty.
Yeah, like, I guess, like, I didn't even notice the new couch or whatever. So it makes me actually like Tana as a roommate in that regard as well, because she's not, like what you said, it could create tension and, have that power imbalance be there. But Tana gave zero you-know-whats. And I kind of love that about her.
Yeah. Rory makes some good points about the issues with it, being the common room that's common to all of them. And I love what she says to Lorelai about it. Tana still doesn't know she's at Yale. Paris saw it and said nothing. Janet's out jogging, so I don't know what she thinks, but I have to hope she's pleased because that girl's in shape and can kick my butt. This is a total invasion of privacy. So I agree with her there. I don't love it. Emily might have stepped over some boundaries there. But having the state-of-the-art stuff in college, kind of swanky. So there's that. And then the other big red flag that occurred to me, at least in the season 4 sweet years, was the die jerk situation. She comes home and finds that someone has written on her whiteboard in permanent marker, die jerk. And obviously it raises Paris's hackles, makes her concerned that someone's after her. Janet's like, ooh, I made out with somebody's boyfriend and they might be coming after me. So she's sort of instilling fear in her roommates for something that she did. I mean, obviously she didn't know that this was going to happen. She didn't foresee having sort of a weird stalker trying to chase her down and tell her how much of a jerk she is. But it just, the situation got a little too close to home. And it freaked her roommates out, rightly so. Like, I would be freaked out if I came home to my dorm and saw that somebody had done that. And I would be concerned.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe even just, we've talked about it, like maybe just the writing needed to be a little bit better there too, as well, with all of these girls not just being so in their own bubbles that they kind of can have better communication about this, which is why I actually really enjoy the scenes that we get with Paris just calling a meeting of the roomies to say, like, hey, we need to talk about, I mean, specifically the die jerk situation, like what's going on, who's being targeted here, how is this affecting all of us? But I wish we had gotten more scenes like that amongst these 4 girls about partying and rooming situations and boys and schedules and sleeping and just more of that, because I feel like communication with a roommate, especially in your first semester, is so clutch in terms of whether or not you're going to be able to make that work. And I just wish we had gotten more of that, because I would have loved to have seen more of Janet and Tana as well. We get a healthy dose of Paris because she's one of our main characters. I would have loved more screen time for Tana and Janet personally.
I agree. We did see a couple roommate meetings. It's usually just Paris poking the bear with Janet, though.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. It's in the Fundamental Things Apply, episode 5. Rory is about to go on her date with Trevor, and Paris calls the meeting. And thank you all for coming. Now I'd like to start this meeting by saying that no one is on trial. This meeting is about healing. It's about redemption. It's about accepting responsibility and making amends. This is a forum for all of us to air our grievances so we can resolve them and go on with our lives. Hey, since I'm already standing, why don't I start? Setting your alarm for 5:30 in the morning when no one else here shares the desire to put on nylon shorts and run in circles for an hour like a greyhound is selfish.
Yeah, I also personally, again, just going back to something you said, if I missed a waffle breakfast, I'd be a little perturbed as well.
Yeah, and had to go down to the cafeteria in bunny slippers and a robe. It's a little rough, but she got over it. It's fine. But yeah, roommate meetings are a good thing. It is a good way to sort of have a forum to talk about issues that might arise, whether beforehand or after the fact, to try to resolve them. So if you have a roommate, maybe a regular meeting would be a good idea instead of just when things come up. And, it's a good way to work on your democracy skills, your empathy and communication around sharing a space. It's always a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Yeah. I mean, again, just going back to my own personal experience, we never did that. As I think I might have tried once or twice, but this other girl that I was rooming with was so unreceptive to it. It just ended up being, we always wanted to bite each other's heads off. And so we would just go to class, come back and have to be in the space together where like just the contention and the heatedness in the room was just, it became unbearable. And that's not a good situation. I wish there had been more communication there, but I think that's why, again, maybe you're an 18-year-old watching this video and you're about to go to university or you're about to go to college. We'll talk about, some do's and don'ts and maybe try and give you some tips. That's one of the biggest ones that I can throw out there. Communicate with your roommate when things are good, but also when they're bad. Just have open dialogue. You're going to be living with this person for a year, if not more. Make it work. And that's one of the biggest ways that I think you can try and have it be a successful year.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to get out ahead of problems and to have clearly defined boundaries than to try to skate over things after the fact and try to repair trust or friendliness that is broken. So I feel like that's what we see a lot in Gilmore, is that sort of a problem arises and then it's dealt with, as opposed to, hey, let's set some ground rules here. For example, there's another roommates meeting where Paris is once again at Janet's throat for her boyfriend always being over and being a little too comfortable in their place. He's kind of always around, and Paris says that he smells. So it doesn't surprise me. I think he's a football player. And football players smell big time. So, it can feel a little invasive when you've got this big guy who's always hanging out in your room and he's just kind of making it an unpleasant place to be. And you didn't really sign up for that. And, if you had a say in it, you'd be like, I don't really feel comfortable with having X, Y, and Z person or X, Y, and Z category of people in the place. Like, if you can go to your boyfriend's room, that'd be great. Thanks. Stuff like that in advance would have prevented a lot of the issues with Rory and with Janet and Paris.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 follow-up questions I want to ask you. First off, I know we've talked about this before, so we don't need to go into it too much, but do you think it was beneficial or detrimental to have Paris basically call in a favor and have her and Rory rooming together that first year, for just obviously, comfort reasons? Like, I know this person, I know that to an extent I can get along with them. Or was it more detrimental in the sense of, no, you should have tried to maybe broaden your horizons and meet new people and not fall back on your go-to high school bestie?
That's such a hard question to answer. It's hard to imagine Yale without Paris. If Rory was a real person, I might say, don't go out of your way to room with her, because it's enough that she's at Yale. It's enough that you have a familiar, friendly face somewhere on campus. You don't have to live together. It's probably better for your friendship that you don't. And so the fact that Paris went ahead and did that on her behalf, it made for some great scenes, but it was, if that happened in real life, it wouldn't be as good. I've heard advice in the past, like, don't live with your friends, because living with friends can get dramatic and testy, and you can ruin friendships that way. So you have to be very careful about who you're living with. And if it is going to be a friend, you have to make sure that you're very much aligned in your lifestyles and that you have really good communication and you can get over the humps. There are friends of mine that I would never live with, and that's okay. Some friendships are not meant to withstand that test.
Yep.
Paris and Rory did surprisingly well, given that they roomed together so much over those 4 years. Obviously, they had their issues, which we'll get to in a little bit, with the whole "you've been Gilmored." But in the end, I believe I mentioned this when we talked about this last time, but I think they were good influences on each other. Rory helped balance out Paris when she was going off the deep end a little bit. She covered for her when she needed to. She supported her when she needed to. And Paris was also a good friend and support to Rory, and, could be counted on sometimes to provide study notes or keep her on track when she was starting to trail.
Yep. I agree. I concur. I think there could have been a way to write it when you still have Paris on scene, and having interactions with one another. But obviously, I think it had to be written that way because it just allowed her to have more screen time if they were actually sharing a space, as opposed to having to constantly create on-campus interactions, which probably would have been a little bit more difficult and unrealistic to do. So I get that as well. But I think it would have helped the both of them to have not been living together and just to, again, broaden their horizons in terms of meeting new people.
Yeah, we did get a ton of new people in Yale. We got the roommates who weren't even in every episode. And we got Marty, who kind of dropped off after Ted Koppel until season 5 when he comes back. Eventually, we get Lucy and Olivia, and obviously Logan and the LDB people. But, Rory's social circle stayed small. And the fact that it predominantly was comprised of Paris for 4 years. Yeah, she could have done to branch out a little bit and maybe make and keep more friends than she did. She was kind of a dabbler, or was hanging out with friends of friends. Doyle, Colin and Finn, etc., etc.
I mean, Colin and Finn are just okay.
Yeah.
But out of the 3 roommates that Rory gets year 1, just as a fun, I guess, maybe ending question to talking about them so we can move on to talking about other people that we get at Yale. Out of the 3, who would you feel like you could get along with best? Who would be middle ground? And which one of the 3 do you feel like you'd have the most trouble with?
Oh, that's a good question. Because they all have their pros and cons. Janet isn't so bad. But the whole, I'm a big jock myself, but not as much of a jock as she is. So we could have fun talking about sports, but having someone who's always up early and who's exercising kind of loudly with the squeaking of the trampoline and the 5:30 a.m. grunting and crunches, the place always probably smelling like sweat. Not great. But I feel like I would be a better roommate for her than Paris was. I feel like we'd get along a little better and wouldn't be butting heads so often. Paris, like I said, is great with kind of being no nonsense and being very driven, being there for the academics. And so, once again, I feel like she would be a good influence on me. She could keep me in line the same way that she keeps Rory in line. But she is very intense and very pig-headed sometimes. So I feel like we would butt heads the most. Tana is the roommate we probably know the least about, but she's so head in the clouds, as you said, that she might actually make a great roommate because she's just kind of off in her own world doing her own thing, and therefore leaving me alone to do my own thing. And she didn't seem like she was super obnoxious. The one time that she has anything obnoxious is when she's soldering that one time. She's working on, yeah, and the whole room smells like fire and melting metal. Not ideal, but other than that, she's not a really obnoxious roommate. So I feel like she'd be good. And like I said, Rory, you know, she's quiet. She keeps to herself. She reads a lot. She's very studious. She's often off studying. So she'd probably be good. That's not even an answer. That's just me rambling about the pros and cons of these people. I don't know who I would want to live with most. I would say maybe Rory or Tana would probably be the best fits for me and would have the fewest downsides, or downsides that I could live with and adapt to.
Yeah. I don't think my answer is too far off. I actually would probably say I'd be most inclined to room with Tana for a lot of the same reasons you just highlighted. She's friendly enough. You know, she's willing to talk to you, even if the conversations are going to be a little off-keeled in terms of, you know, if you're being burglarized, where you should hide things. But she has a healthy respect for boundaries, which Paris specifically does not. Janet, in a similar way, just in the sense of being maybe a little bit too uncaring about how her schedule is affecting other people's. And then same thing with Rory, not that she's a disrespecter of boundaries, but again, the whole my way or the highway thing. I feel like I'd be most copacetic with Tana.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny because I noticed something when I was watching Lorelai's first day at Yale that I'd never noticed before. It's around the 14-minute mark of the episode. If you look at when they come into Durfee and there's a whole group of girls, and the residence advisor or whatever she is, Tess, is kind of giving them the lay of the land. I mean, like, you'll have questions later. There's obviously, like I said, a group of girls. And behind Rory, you can see who I'm pretty sure is Tana. But she's wearing a different outfit than when we see her come into the suite. It's clear to me, I think, that they filmed these on different days and that Scripty screwed up on the continuity and neglected to pay attention to Tana's costuming for some reason. It was different. So unless it was somebody who happens to look a lot like Olivia Hack that they used as an extra, or maybe she was just supposed to be an extra and then she was promoted to being the roommate and they had sort of forgotten all about it and didn't cross-reference to see what she was wearing before. But yeah, go watch that and look at how different she looks. Her hair is down instead of up, and she's wearing a whole different outfit. And I'm like, continuity, people.
I never caught that as well until you pointed it out, and then I went back and watched it, and it is 100% Olivia. Like, there is no doubt in my mind. So, oopsie.
Oops, Scripty, do better.
Yep. Also, there are people who are on sets where it's like, that is solely your job to maintain continuity. You failed.
That's exactly. I use Scott Patterson's terminology for it. I'm pretty sure that's the person who is in charge of continuity and whatnot. That's how he refers to them. So I picked that up over my time listening to I Am All In. But yeah.
Anything else that you want to talk about with Rory's first year roomies before we move on?
I don't think so. We have covered the party in quite some detail in another episode. So if you want more of that, go check out our University Experiences episode from last year. That's definitely a really interesting interaction between her and Paris, trying to get her to come out of her shell a little bit. And I love how Paris calls Lorelai and brings her into it. It's just like, I know it's tempting to stunt your daughter so that she'll come take care of you in your old age, but she needs to, you know, wise up and join the party, literally. And even after Rory is convinced by Paris to do this for her, and to not be so selfish, she's still quite resistant. And it just kind of goes to what you said about her being selfish as a roommate, her way or the highway. So I guess there's all of that. But yeah, I think we've talked about that one enough. So I suppose that brings us to season 5, which is interesting because she's living with Paris again, but they're living in a double where they each have a room and then a shared common room. And obviously we have them coming back together at Yale. just after Paris has lost Asher. And so Rory beats her to the room, picks her bedroom, sets herself up. And of course, Paris comes back from Oxford and switches their rooms while she's out. She's like, it may seem like my room gets more sunlight, but you'll thank me when you don't get melanoma. How do you feel about Paris kind of coming in and calling all the shots and redoing what Rory has already done?
I mean, it kind of tracks for Paris Geller, let's be honest. So it doesn't surprise me in that regard. But again, just talk with your roommate. Maybe Rory would have been fine with it. And it seems like, obviously, I think, to an extent, she just knows Paris is going to do what she's going to do. That's just what she's always done. That's what this friendship is. But even if that was like my best friend, I would just be like, could you just talk to me first about it and maybe just ask, like, hey, would you be cool with this? Would you be cool with that? Again, I can't stress it enough. Communication and dialogue with a person that you're sharing a space with, whether it doesn't even have to be partners. Like, again, it could just be friends or college roommates. Like, if you're cohabiting with somebody, just talk about it, because it's so difficult to make work, even down to what can be the most granular things about just cleaning responsibilities, disposing of waste, shower schedules, just being mindful of sleep schedules. Just talk about it. And Paris didn't do that here. And then she just executively decides this is going to be okay. And it goes back to what you said about that line. She's like, you're going to like it because now you don't have to worry about skin cancer. So we're good. Have a nice day.
Yeah, she always tries to find the silver lining and put a spin on it to make it sound like she did this in your own best interest, which is interesting. And then, of course, we have the delivery of the 18th century Blau printing press that was left to her by Asher, which traps Rory's book bag under it and makes her late for class. That was fun. Once again, Paris finds the silver lining, being like, we could start a newsletter. It's a great conversation piece. We'll be the talk of Brantford. And Rory's like, yeah, we will.
It was just a little bit of an eyesore.
Just a little obtrusive.
It's not invasive.
It's not.
Also, and just a weird gift, I think, to pass along after death.
But what other family member would want that more than Paris? Let's be real.
That's fair. That's fair.
It kind of screams Paris Geller. Who else would be that interested in a printing press?
Gutenberg?
I see what you did there. Yeah. Although this was after his time. So yeah. The whole good communication with roommates and talking about schedules and cleanliness and all of that really does get glossed over in the show, because good communication doesn't make for good television. It's a little bit boring. And so we're left to fill in the gaps about peaceful cohabitation. And frankly, we wouldn't get scenes like Rory getting kicked out of Paris's room, or, Doyle coming out in Paris's robe after their first night together, without skipping over some of that stuff, because it feeds right into the drama that the writers love creating between Rory and Paris. So we're telling you in the real world to watch out for this stuff, but when it comes to TV, nobody wants to watch that. Although, like I said, the roommates meetings are conceptually a good idea, but don't use them just to air your grievances with people all the time.
Yeah. Talk about the good things as well. Maybe say, hey, I'm really grateful that, like, you take out the trash and that you took it upon yourself to clean the bathroom or keep the kitchen clean, XYZ. Shared responsibilities and duties are important as well. So you need to have a healthy mix of just praising your roommates and the people that you're sharing a space with when they do things that are nice. And then, like you said, too, when something is not going well, just maybe talking about, again, in a healthy way, without biting someone's head off. I don't like that. We need to discuss why that's not okay.
Yeah. Okay, I want to back us up because I forgot that I had notes on a whole other thing for season 4. So I feel like it makes sense to backtrack to that now. They kind of have a fifth roommate at one point for a short duration. Let's not forget that Lane moves into Durfee with them for a time after her mom kicks her out. And this causes some tension with the roommates. How do you feel about that whole situation?
Yeah. I'm on board with her roommates having issue with it because Lane overstayed her welcome. And that's where I think the biggest problem lied. It wasn't just that, Lane got into a fight with Mrs. Kim. Maybe she just needs a night or two to have somewhere else to crash so she can just clear her head, figure out the type of conversation she wants to have with her mom and how to bridge, or rectify what has happened there moving forward. But she wasn't just there for a night or two. She was there for a very extended period of time. And even though she was seemingly doing nice things for the girls, getting them coffee, helping out with the cleaning, it made what was already probably a small enough space for 4 people even smaller by her presence, especially when she is not attending that university, really doesn't have a right to be there. And Rory's trying to be a good friend and get her roommates on board with just let her stay a little while longer, think about all of the good things that she does for us. But I think that Janet, Tana, and Paris were well within the rights to be like, this has gone on too long now. It's not okay. She needs to go. Rory was a bit too complacent there with just allowing Lane to crash for as long as she did. So I understand their grievances and them wanting to essentially kick her out, as mean as that may sound.
Yeah. Paris even uses her as an excuse when it comes to Jamie and says, we have drama going on in the suite. Rory's small town friend Lane is crashing with us. She got kicked out of her house and she's in pretty bad shape. She's pretty heavy into the drugs, totally an anti-spongeoning it, chasing the dragon. And I kind of have to be here for support. And so obviously Rory is talking to Jamie about this later and says, I heard her telling you about my friend. She's been living in our suite and it's been really unfair to all my roommates. And I think that's the only time she acknowledges it. And it's when she's lying to Jamie on Paris's behalf. And so I don't love that. Mm-hmm. It's the only time she happens to utter the truth about how unfair it is, because dorms are already tough enough. It's hard enough to have 3 other people living with you. Adding a 5th who's not supposed to be there, who, no matter how kind or helpful they are, it's still an added stressor that nobody really needed. So I'm a little surprised she didn't suggest Lane move in with Lorelai sooner, because Lorelai had the space. And Lane could have gotten back to her life instead of living vicariously through Rory a little bit there. I hate it when she initially goes out for the night and doesn't tell her mom and comes and crashes with Rory and says, look at what you have. Look at your life here. I have no life. I'm jealous of you for everything that you have. And then she kind of works her way into it. I don't think she did that purposely. I think she really did feel like she had nowhere to go, but it wasn't a solution. It wasn't the right solution. It was mostly just an imposition, unfortunately. So I hate to say that about someone as nice as Lane, but yeah, it really wasn't cool that Rory seemingly unilaterally said it was okay for Lane to stay there for weeks on end.
Yeah, and it really stunted Lane as well, because Lorelai has always been a good influence on Lane in the past. We see her continue to be a good influence on her in the future. I agree that suggestion that she move in with Lorelai should have been made sooner, because Lane's just stunted chilling at Yale. She's not doing anything to try and even course correct with Mrs. Kim, or even just ruminate on why and how that went wrong and what she can do moving forward. She kind of just, in the best way I can put it, just put herself on pause and there's not going to be any forward movement or progression in your life when you're just living in your best friend's dorm room, especially while all the other girls have other responsibilities like classes, again, sports, extracurriculars, studying. Elaine was probably, again, like one of the nicest roomy but not roomies that you could have had in that situation in terms of trying to contribute. But it was just, again, a pause button on her life when it's like you need to just keep hitting play and move forward a little bit more.
Exactly. All right, skipping back ahead in time, what about when Rory moves in with Paris and Doyle in that apartment, like on campus but not on campus? Like it's not dorm housing, but it's in a really sketchy area of New Haven.
Was that a gunshot? No, it's just a car backfiring. You're fine.
Yeah, it's called Ghetto Ear. You'll get used to it.
Yeah. Awkward. And I think they made it work as best as they could, but you know, even just again Doyle coming out and like a rope, like heaven forbid, what if like you know, Doyle doesn't know that Rory's home and he just strolls out into the living room naked and Rory's like, oh my gosh, like so many things could go wrong there, vice versa. You know, Rory could think like Paris and Doyle are out for the afternoon, and so you know, she comes out of like a shower, you know, again in a robe or not fully dressed. It's just like there's awkward situations with that. Again, I don't want to like, you know, bring gender into it too much, but obviously there's going to be it's different, you know, for Rory as a straight woman living with another straight woman who's your friend, now with your friend and her boyfriend, and there's that added dynamic. You know, obviously down the line we see like a situation about like milk in the refrigerator come up, you know, and there's that. If I was in Rory's shoes, that's not a situation that I would want to be in, just because it would make me feel awkward. And I'm sure maybe even Doyle probably felt awkward sometimes, just not being able to really be himself and be comfortable with Paris, because there's this third person who's there now. Just like it's just a weird triangle that like I personally would not love. I think they made it work as best as they could for the time being, but it was just a weird situation. And when Rory eventually gets out of it, I mean, because Paris ousts her, and we can talk about that, I think it was just good for it to be done when it was done.
Yeah, Paris and Doyle are both very interesting roommates separately, but having them as a couple as your roommates was just a whole other level of weird. We saw him making himself very much at home in their Brantford dorm the year before. You know, I remember the scene of him sitting on the couch eating Rory's chips with his feet up on the table, just making himself right at home. And, you know, it's never anybody, and can't talk. Never any fun when someone invades your space like that and eats your snacks and just is kind of around when you don't want him to be around. And so they take this to the next level when Paris and Doyle are training for Krav Maga because they live in a sketchy neighborhood and they're, you know, trying to keep themselves safe, trying to beef up their self-defense skills, and there's wrestling in the living room of their apartment. They're both very particular people who have interests and needs and lifestyles that can be challenging for people who live with them. So it's interesting that they made it work with each other as long as they did, both sort of being weird, but having their weirdness come together so beautifully. But yeah, being that third person in there must not have been super comfortable for Rory, especially when she tries to bring Logan into things. And like you said, the milk situation, Logan finishes off Paris's 2%, which she needed for her cereal. And it meant that she had to skip breakfast that morning. And he had no idea. And Rory didn't warn him. For some reason, Paris couldn't use skim milk in her cereal because, God forbid, it's only for cooking and baking, don't you know? Uh, so, yeah, they were an odd pairing of roommates to have. And again, made for good TV. But I think Rory moving off and living with Logan was probably better for her in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and even with the milk thing, like, you know, could you say, like, was Rory or was Paris being a little bit too particular and uppity? Could you have just made your breakfast using a different type of milk? Yeah, probably. But everyone is going to have their creature comforts. You're allowed to have them. And that's why it's important to talk about those things with, again, whoever you are living with. So I can understand Paris's side of things where it's just like, it was just a wrench at the start of her day that she didn't expect to encounter. And so, yeah, I mean, I get it.
Maybe she needs a list on the fridge. But
Milk
again,
instructions.
Logan kind of came out of nowhere. She wasn't expecting him to move in and to stay as long as, move in. He was crashing there after quitting his dad's business and leaving the apartment in New York that his dad's company was paying for. So it was kind of a last minute unforeseen circumstance that nobody was expecting. And it changed the dynamic again that was already probably pretty tenuous to begin with. So it's always tricky. I'm pretty particular myself, and so whenever I have someone here and they do something in a way that's not what I would do, I'm like, ooh. And then I just have to remember that I'm weird, and then I just need to chill out. Paris was incapable of chilling out, so
yeah. Again, there's a balance to be struck there. It's okay to have a certain way of doing things. It's well within anyone's right to have their schedule and their norms and their routines. Just talk about it with, again, whoever you're living with, so they're aware, like, XYZ might bother me if you do that. Just talk about it. I can't say it enough. Just talk.
Yeah. If you take away anything from this episode, just talk.
Just talk about it.
Yeah. Speaking of Paris having no chill, you've been Gilmore'd when she evicts Rory and puts all of her stuff out in the hallway. And Rory has to scramble to find a new place. And Logan's like, move in with me. How did you feel about that?
Yeah. I was okay with it. You know, I think Logan obviously knew that Rory was going to have to say yes, because at that point, where else was she going to go? You know, it was the middle of the year. She herself says, like, you know, what is out there? There are really no options for me. Nothing is free or available right now. So I will commend Logan for, you know, stepping in and offering a solution and saying, like, hey, come in and you know, room with me and live with me. But I think Rory's trepidation was because perhaps she even knew, like, this is a big step. We haven't really, again, talked about it yet. What is this going to be like? You know, we're diving headfirst into it, not knowing if it's going to be good or bad for our relationship. But I think obviously at the end of the day, she just had to do it because she didn't have any other options.
Yeah, it's not great when you move in with a significant other out of necessity. That can put a lot of unnecessary pressure on a fledgling relationship. But I think that Logan ended up being Rory's least dramatic roommate. They actually seemed to get on pretty well living together. And yeah, I think it was a nice offer when he did it. He's like, Paris's place as a whole, I don't like that you were living there anyway. You're here half the time. You've already got 2 dresser drawers. And right now, for a limited time, I'll throw in 3 more drawers and a set of Ginsu knives. Really? No, I have no idea where to get Ginsu knives. Yeah, I love that. He's just so open and receptive and generous. And for someone who hasn't had serious relationships before, this is a big step for him. And he doesn't even hesitate to do it. And I think they get along great as roommates. We don't see a ton of drama created by their living situation. Anytime there's drama between them, it usually has some other cause, like him wanting to go off to Costa Rica and jump off a cliff. stuff like that. Or I feel like there's another one, but I don't remember what it is. Oh, the article that she writes that's offensive to his people.
Yeah. But Logan was very much, and he always has been, a go with the flow sort of guy. So he's not going to be as maybe pedantic or as uppity as Paris or, even someone like Janet was going to be. He was just very much, okay, it is what it is. Like if something really bad came up, like, I don't know, again, just cheating or, really significant uncleanliness or just something that was very problematic, then yeah, I'm sure Logan is going to say, like, we need to talk about this. But for the most part, I think he is a good roommate, not just to Rory, but just in general, because he's very much going to just be doing his own thing anyway and very hands off. You don't have to worry about having like someone big brothering you, nor somebody that you have to really babysit as well. The independent streak within him in that regard is good.
Yeah, I think he was a good fit for her in a lot of ways, but definitely as a roomie. I love that for them.
Yeah. And it helps when you can just call on, your friends to also just be like, pick up all her stuff, go to the Gilmore household, let's move her in. Like, bless Colin and Finn. They're some good friends to have.
It's true. They have their moments. And then in season 7, Logan moves to New York, and so Rory feels weird living in his place when he's, 90 minutes away now. And so she moves back in with Paris and Doyle. And I love the scene where they're moving her stuff back in, and Paris says, all we have left to do now is the paperwork. You want me to sign a lease? Well, you're subletting for me, and last time you lived here, you just up and left in the middle of the year. You kicked me out, you moved all my stuff out into the hallway, and locked the door. Well, now you'll have a legally binding contract that will negate my ability to do that in the future. So, it kind of, as someone who's lived in a couple different places, I'm like, oh my god, you didn't have a lease this whole time? Maybe it was because Paris and Doyle signed the lease initially with whoever they were leasing from. And Rory was not officially on it because she moved in halfway through the year. But yeah, a lease is a really good way to lay out all of the terms and conditions and to set duties and responsibilities and all of these things. Or if you're Paris, you can add clauses like rights and privileges of Logan Huntsberger or any other paramours.
Yeah. I mean, but she was always going to do that, though. And Logan just has the best response to it. He's just like, it is what it is, Paris. I will kick in and contribute. It's fine. Again, I really do like that about Logan, just as a person, that he's so just like, I'm not here to cause waves. Really, whatever you want, as long as it's not an outrageous request, I'm going to try and like just get along with everybody. We're good.
Yeah. That a boy, Rockefeller. Yeah. And then she stays with Paris all the way through to the end of the series. One of the last episodes features her spackling the walls as they prepare to move out after she's graduated. And it's a bittersweet moment. It's another big change to go from living with Paris all this time. And now they're truly adults who are going off into the world and doing their own thing. Paris is going off to Harvard and Rory's going off to get a job. And it's kind of sad to see the apartment empty and all the holes in the walls and all that, but some good memories were had in that apartment. Some bad ones, but also some good ones.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, what would you say are some of the biggest takeaways from all of the rooming situation that we see in terms of maybe like some do's and don'ts?
One big don't is do not throw your roommate out the window every night for a month until they transfer. Not cool.
That's fair.
Richard Gilmore, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Maybe I'll counter with a do. The biggest positive that I think I saw. Um, Maybe even again from Logan. Just, you know, yes and everything unless something really problematic comes up. You know, Paris was very guilty about causing waves and disagreements over the smallest thing. Um, it's so easy to take what is such a small situation and blow it up and, make it seem so disproportional to what is actually probably a really quick fix to something. Um, Unless something really egregious is happening with the person that you're rooming with, just try and get along. And I think Logan did that the best out of pretty much everyone that we saw.
Yeah. For all you can say about Logan, he's a good roommate.
There's not like, acidity within my mouth, just complimenting Logan for something. It's fine.
Such sweet words to hear you say. He did have a roommate at one point too. We see him a grand total of once. Lanny. Everybody remember Lanny from season 5? Lanny, message.
Take a message.
We had no idea he existed until that moment. So, and not ever since. So that's fun. Do have roommate meetings, but don't use them exclusively to air your grievances. Set boundaries in advance, set out expectations and responsibilities so that everybody is on the same page and problems are avoided instead of having to fight after the fact when someone's done something that pisses you off.
Yep. Maybe going along with that, do be mindful of everyone's sleep schedules and the fact that some people are going to be morning people, some people are going to be night owls. Don't get passive aggressive and shut off alarms.
Yes. Do have an alternate study plan if you can't get peace and quiet in your suite. My suggestion is the deepest, darkest level of the library basement at a study carrel with headphones and binaural beats or ASMR or something like deep focus. I know Rory said that she doesn't like to study in a place that's too Unabomber. And I'm like, how? How can you focus in the elements under a tree better than you could at a library study carrel? I don't understand it. I can't even like read a book for pleasure outside. I'm always like, the sun is too bright. There's a bug right there. Like ants are crawling all over me. So I don't know why she thought a tree was her better bet. But yeah, definitely figure out a way to study. Have a place to go to when you need to escape your roommates so that you've got a little bit of time and space away.
Yeah, I think this will be my last do and don't, but just spitballing off of that, do make an effort to meet other girls, guys, whomever that are on your floor, that are in your building. It doesn't have to be about just the 1, 2, or 3 people that you are living with. They're not your end all be all. Walk up a floor, go down a floor. I'm not saying like enter into someone's dorm room just because their door is open. But if there's someone just, chilling in the living room who looks like, they're approachable and willing to talk to other people. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people at whatever school you're attending. Meet other people besides it's not just all about the people that you're living with.
I totally concur with that one. And spinning off of that, I say do get involved in the social life of your dorm, join the council or join a club. I played flag football with my floor. We had the Totem Football League, and I did that both years that I lived in Totem. And like I said, I was on the residence council as a house president and then secretary. There are other ways to contribute to your residential community. And I highly suggest doing it because it's so much fun and it's such a great way to meet people and to have something to put on your resume. It's just a ton of fun. Like I have so many memories of my years in residence, even though it was like 15 years ago. Stop. Yeah. Ugh, I know it pains me to do that math. So, but just the fact that it has stuck with me for so long, I think speaks to the importance of those friendships and just those silly moments. Like I can think to this time when we were in there's sort of a common room on the first floor of each totem house, I think. And or in it might have even been in the commons block area. No, it wasn't commons block. I think it was the first floor. And they had these tables, like, just a standard table. And we were trying to do this thing where like you end up on the top and you flip under and come all the way back around without touching the ground. It was just so silly, and it was impressive to watch people do it and fun to even try, even though I definitely did not have the core strength to make it happen. But the fact that I remember that all these years later is just like, man, that was good times. Those were good people. And if you used to live in Totem Park and you somehow found this video, I hope you're doing well, because those were some of the best years of my life. I think Richard says it to Rory when she's going to host Anna, and he says that a good education is a well-rounded one. And I think that getting involved in your residence is a good way to be more well-rounded and to enjoy this process of being at university or college, because there aren't a lot of other life circumstances like it. It's like a singular time in your life where you can do these things, where you can be silly, you can stay up all night with your housemates and form friendships and memories that will stick with you. And I highly encourage everyone to get involved and do things that aren't just studying, because you really do need that time to socialize and to blow off steam. And I think
Sorry, folks.
Hi, Vinny. Hello, sir. Welcome to the pod again. Come say hi.
You're up here, so you might as well.
If you're gonna do this, you got to be ready to work it for the camera, buddy.
Say hi to the viewers since you're crashing.
Vinny, what would you say to college freshmen and potentials? What advice would you give? Well, my advice is more catnip.
Okay.
Watch the catnip on campus, okay? Just careful with that stuff.
Don't partake too much. It's good to have fun, but not too much fun.
Don't overindulge.
Are you good crashing? Do you want to get back? Okay. Yep,
there he goes. Yeah, and one more I would say, is do have a lease. Obviously, maybe not for dorms per se, because in that circumstance it's between you and the residents association, or for me it was UBC housing. But anytime you're in an off-campus place, have something in writing that guarantees your rights as a tenant, and have maybe something a little more unofficial with your roommates, like a cleaning schedule or a designated quiet study time, a TV schedule, a bathroom schedule, whatever it takes for you to live peacefully with someone else. I highly suggest figuring that out in advance and being clear about your needs and your wants and what it's going to take for you to be happy, healthy, thriving, and to maintain your peace and your privacy.
Yeah, I agree. And I will just end off my thoughts for this episode by just saying, along with all of that, roomies can really make or break your experience. I mean, for me, that first semester, my roomie broke my experience. It was not a good one. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. You can have really beneficial and positive roommate experiences, but it's going to be what you make of it. Everyone involved has to take the time to put in the work, like you said, whether it's coming up with schedules for cleaning, studying, sleeping, who gets the bathroom when. Put in the effort, because again, at the end of the day, the whole experience within college, university, even just sharing a space with a roommate post-college, perhaps, again, it's always going to be what you make of it. So put in the work and you can have a really positive experience.
Yeah, very well said. I think that wraps us up for this one.
Yep.
All right.
As always, if you have thoughts, or even if you want to share perhaps some of your own experiences in college or university, what it was like for you, give other people some tips, share your own do's and don'ts. The comment section is below. Drop us one and share your, your takes. And we always would love to read them and hear what you think as well.
Yeah, and don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. It's fast, it's free, really helps us out, and we're so grateful for everyone who decides to drop us a like, let us know that they like what we're doing, and who decides to subscribe and stick around. So thanks.
Yep. One final thing before we call this episode again. Every week we get closer to Guilford, Connecticut Fan Fest, October 18th through 20th. Tickets are dwindling. Do not wait to buy one because they probably will sell out. I can't talk anymore by the end of the summer. But if you love GG as much as we do, this is the weekend for you. We've included links to that event in the description below. Go check out that website and consider attending.
Yeah, and make sure you join the Facebook group because sometimes, especially if the tickets do sell out, check the Facebook group because there might be people whose travel plans change. Now I can't talk either. Whose travel plans change, and they're going to be reselling their tickets. So don't like totally write it off if all the tickets manage to sell out. You never know what might happen. And don't forget to stay up to date as well on the cruise that's happening in January. If you miss out on the October event, you could do Key West, Florida and the Bahamas on a boat with 6 cast members and, 250, 300 Gilmore Girls fans all on a cruise ship. So that would be pretty epic. So make sure to check out the social media and the Facebook group for updates on that, for all of the deadlines and all of the dates. And we hope to see you there because it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be doing Gilmore's Against Humanity again, and we're so excited to just be back with all of our Gilmore friends.
Yep. Any questions about that? Again, shoot us an email. The Facebook group planning page, again, will always have people in there who can answer any inquiries you might have as well. It's a very warm and welcoming and loving community. So we hope to see you there.
And if you're on the fence about it and still want more information, we did an episode with Jenny back in June. So go check that out if you want to know more about the event itself, because we always love hanging out with Jenny and talking to her. So go enjoy that.
Yep. Aside from seeing you hopefully in Guilford, Connecticut, again, 18th through 20th, we will also see you next Friday night for dinner.
Bye.
Take care.